Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 276 of Destiny Massive Breakdowns. As ever, I am your host, Kid Kutcha, and I am here today with a bit of a throwback. So I originally recorded a version of this episode last season, and it unfortunately, it got superseded. I ran into a scheduling conundrum because Bungie reached out and said, "Hey, we'd like to send Mercules back to do a developer interview episode this week," and I couldn't very well pass that opportunity up. So what I ended up doing was shelving the original version of this episode, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just publish it next week, and then it just kind of didn't work out because we had the new season launching and a bunch of stuff kind of coming out all at once, and it just ended up never going live, and then it was kind of out of date. And so here we are doing a brand new version of this episode, and I feel very fortunate that my guest has made time in his schedule to join us once again. Now, the original version of this episode will be getting shared on Patreon. So for patrons, if you want to hear what the thoughts were way back, right after the Scout Rifle buff, during that kind of that Trials weekend when Scouts blew up and everybody was freaking out that it was a Scout Rifle meta, you can check out Patreon, and I will be publishing that episode there for the patrons to listen to. This is going to be a little bit of a different take on Scout Rifles in PvP, and I'd like to welcome today my guest, the king of hung jury, DefyFly. Defy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me again. It's good to be back. Maybe get some information a little bit more up to date.
Yeah. Yeah, things have certainly played out. I don't know, how well. I guess what we thought might happen last time has some of that has happened, and some of that stuff has not happened. Certainly, people's fears about Scout Rifles becoming like the dominant weapon in the Crucible have not panned out.
No, I think people just got a little bit excited because that 1 week, it was a long-range map, and the Scouts had just gotten buffed, and everyone's kind of freaking out. It died down a little bit, and now people are back to pulses and hand cannons and back on track.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. Scouts definitely have a place, though, and I think that's the big takeaway that I had from our original conversation and kind of from the buffs, is that there's definitely room in the Crucible right now for a Scout Rifle user to do well. But it is probably for the best that Scouts are not the dominant weapon type.
For sure.
All right, well, let's get into stuff. So most everybody listening to this episode will not have heard the original version yet, as maybe aside from a few dedicated patrons. So in just a minute here, I want to talk a little bit about you and how you got into Destiny, and what what kind of stuff you do in the community, and where people might know you from. Real quick, I'm just going to take a moment and say thank you to a couple of folks who make this show possible. So massive shout outs to the Destiny Massive Breakdowns sponsor Guardians. These patrons give incredibly generously, month in and month out, to support this show, to support PvE, and the whole Massive Breakdowns effort. So it's a very special thank you to Sylv, The Shazzle, Binary Wolf, Black Hammer Tech, This Moment 23, Deacon, Askian Monk, Zen SoCal, Starscream S13, and Impetus. I deeply appreciate your support, as I do the support of all of our ongoing patrons who give generously every single month, and there's a lot of them, and it's a fun crew. We have a lot of fun hanging out in the secret Discord chat, and if you'd like to join us, you're always welcome. All right, with that said, let's go back to the show. DeFi, I first caught wind of you because I was looking for talented scout rifle users in the Destiny community, and it's an elite club. There are not a lot of folks who put in the time to make scouts good in the Crucible. But I saw clips of you just, hitting like 99 damage, 102 damage on headshots with your hung jury, and I was just like, what on earth is this guy doing? So I pass the mic to you for a few minutes here. Take me through the journey for you to becoming a scout rifle user, to kind of becoming notorious as a scout rifle user. Fill us in on the path that you took.
Well, yeah, definitely. Scouts are definitely not something that everyone likes, but I kind of got into them early back in Destiny 1. It was something that when I picked up the game, I would like to run around in patrols. I didn't really play much PvP, but I would just go around using scout rifles, and they were always my favorite. So that was kind of how it started out, and leading into D2, I had loved Hung Jury back from D1, and I was hoping to kind of find some sort of AML on Scout just like that. Immediately after the Taken King was over and Rise of Iron had dropped, I accidentally deleted my Hung Jury.
Ooh.
And I never got it back again. I looked for so many ways to try and uninstall the DLC or try and get that gun back, but because I was on PlayStation, I couldn't do that. So I needed some sort of AML on Scout, and luckily there were a lot of options in D2. And so that led me to just look for something right. And then Bungie had announced that it was coming back. The pinnacle of PvE scouts back in the day. And I needed to get my hands on it. I made a promise that if it came back, I would use it. And so far, I haven't broken that promise. There's quite a few good rolls on it, but I definitely like the box breathing roll because, like you were saying before, you can get up to 99, 100, 102 damage depending on people's resil tiers. And it definitely hurts. But if you put in the time with it, it's not going to steer you the wrong way. You can use it on pretty much any map, get around. It's just great. It's a great fun weapon.
Yeah. And that box breathing roll, boy, that really puts a hurting on people that they do not expect from a scout rifle. Certainly not from a scout rifle that isn't, Jade Rabbit or Polaris Lance. So just as kind of a preview, and we'll come back to this at the end of the show to remind folks, but where would folks see you in the Destiny community? What platforms do you hang out on? How could they connect with you?
I'm over on Discord. I have my own server at discord.gg/DefyFly, or mainly the two platforms that I'm on the most are Twitch and Twitter.
Yep.
Both at DefyFly.
Well, certainly so there were two ways that I first came to know about you, and that was both through Twitter. First through some great clips, and then also through some spicy hot takes, which is what Twitter is best for.
Definitely.
So, well, today we'll go beyond hot takes, and we'll dive into some stuff in a long form where you can express your thoughts fully. So, let's do that. Now, first up, we are recording this on the 18th of September 2022. So it is Trials weekend, first Trials of Season 18. So we're gonna firmly date this episode here, and it will absolutely come out on time, a week after recording. Even if Bungie does send a dev to me, I'm gone this week, so I can't possibly record another episode. So with all that to say, I want to start this episode out by talking about how Trials is going and how PvP in general is going in Season 18. This is going to be a hot topic all season because Destiny is changing almost weekly right now. Bungie is fiddling with settings. They are experimenting with the control playlist, and we are all lab rats in this experiment right now. So I would like to get your take on how that's going. You know, we've had some control, we've had some Eruption Iron Banner, and now we've got the first Trials weekend going. So from your perspective, what's been good, what's been bad, what needs to happen to make it better?
My opinion is probably not anywhere near what other people think, but let's get into it, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it.
So control is probably at the worst state it's been in a long time, I would say. Just because Bungie's practicing with this loose skill-based matchmaking, and from what I've experienced, it's horrible. They did tweak it a little bit and it has felt better, but the connections are still nowhere near what they should be, and it leads on to getting deaths that you shouldn't, and it makes for a very unfun experience, I guess is the best way to put it. It takes a lot out of you, I guess. With Trials feels great. I don't have really any issues there. There's a couple laggy connections here, bad connections there, but otherwise, I believe I played like 8 cards this week, something like that.
Been
we
busy.
didn't really have it. Yeah, we didn't have any issues during all 8 of those. It was maybe one game out of all of them. It felt great. And with Iron Banner as well, because that was just out last week. The new game mode felt pretty good. That was fun. It had some changes with Eruption and how the timer before you blew up went. I didn't have any connection issues there, so that one felt good as well. But I'm not sure what the plan is with control. It's
right.
The casual playlist, and it doesn't feel very casual.
Sure.
It feels kind of like you're trying way harder in there than you are anywhere else, really.
Well, let's dig into those a little bit, right? Because obviously we know, you know, and you're at least as active on Twitter as I am, so you've seen the whole. There's a whole host of opinions out there. People are pretty fired up about control. So let's talk a little bit more about that. And I'm a pretty decent PvPer. Certainly not in the top 10%, much less the top 1%. But, you know, for me, I haven't seen a whole lot of difference in control, which tells me that, that I'm not in that top skill bracket. It also, you know, I also wonder how valid my experience is because of where I'm located. You know, I'm Central Texas, surrounded by millions of people, and the more time I spend connecting with folks, the more I realize that there are a lot of Texas-based Destiny players out there. You know, which makes sense, right? Anywhere there's a big population center, going to be a lot of people playing games, and so your chances of having a good connection to other players go up. And since I'm surrounded by like 5 major population centers,
wow.
You know, I live right outside of one major city. I've got another an hour north of me, one 3 hours west, one 4 hours north. They're all around me. So I do wonder how comparable my experience is. Now I don't know exactly where you are, and I'm not gonna ask you to out your geographic location, but but my question is this, you know, so and the complaint that I've heard primarily from you and from a lot of other people who are very talented PvP players is that connections have just been really, really bad. And that's kind of taken an experience that used to be, you know, fun and made it terrible. Which is, I think, always the case, right? When connections drop in a first-person shooter, the game stops being fun.
Yeah, definitely.
But we also hear, I guess, a lot of complaints from people. I am also connected to a lot of people who are not so good at the Crucible, or who fall somewhere into that mushy middle, or who fall in the bottom 25%. And certainly I know, in the bottom 1% is having the same problems as the top 1%. Connections for them are going to be terrible because their population is very small, right? It's a bell curve. But they don't seem to be on Twitter, so I don't hear from those folks. But where I'm going with all of this is that a lot of folks who are in that bottom, say 25 to 30%, for them, their experience has vastly improved in the sense that they're now mostly just playing people in their skill bracket. And so they're going into matches and, there's no one player on the other team who just wipes the floor with them, who they stand no chance against, or at least it's a lot less common for that to happen. Do you feel like there is a solution where everybody gets to have their cake and eat it here, or are some people kind of always going to be left out in the cold?
I think there is a way you could have people be a little bit more accepting of the system, but I think at some point there are going to be people that are completely left out. It's either going to be the higher end of people that are going to have more issues because they're better, or it's going to be the lower end because not everyone can be happy all at the same time. I have heard from quite a bit of maybe less skilled players that they're having a great time and Control feels really, really fun. There are still connection problems that they've mentioned, but otherwise their skill bracket, I guess, feels really, really fun to them. And I think skill-based matchmaking could work, but without connections being prioritized, it's not going to work for the majority of players. And I think focusing on maybe the very, very low-end skill of players doesn't necessarily help the entire population. So if we can kind of find that middle ground of what helps everyone have a good connection and have a good, I guess, skill ceiling as well, so that one person isn't running around dominating the whole lobby while maybe some other people are just unable to leave spawn. I think that's probably going to be the best balance. It seems like they're testing it and trying to find that sweet spot, but it seems like they're not prioritizing connections over it, which is my biggest issue.
Yeah. Well, that's a fair answer, and I think it'll just remain an experiment for now. I'm curious every week to see if we're going to get a new announcement about tweaks to the Control playlist. Last week I recorded an episode and then they came out and announced a bunch of changes. And this week I feel like the same thing's going to happen. We're going to talk about some stuff and then Bungie's going to come out on Thursday and be like, hey, we're changing this stuff. That's the nature of talking about this game. Slightly less than live, but yeah, my hope is that we can find some kind of middle ground where the bottom 30% never sees the top 30%, and vice versa, and the folks in the middle, kind of play a little bit of both. Sometimes they're the best player in the lobby, and sometimes they're the worst, and that's a better experience than always being one or the other, I think. And hopefully that gives a big enough population to everybody to fix this issue. But I don't know, there's a lot of math they have to do and a lot of figuring out how many people do we need in each skill bracket and how fast do we expand those. So I don't know. It could be a long journey this season. So I'm kind of just buckled up for this ride, and I'm curious to see, in 3 months, how different will the game be? 3 months ago, it was pretty different than it is now.
Oh, for sure. We're definitely the guinea pigs this season.
We are. Yeah, this is the season of the guinea pig, really, more than the exactly. Season of plunder, at least for PvP mains. So switching tacks, I want to talk a little bit about Eruption. So it sounds like you had a good time in Eruption.
For the most part, yes. There's some small changes that I would make here and there, like specifically map weighting, which was something in the 12 recently.
Yeah.
It felt like disjunction was there every single match. And of course, with something like Eruption, where you'll blow up if you don't get to the other side, it made it a little difficult to enjoy it on a map like that. But on much smaller maps, it was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
So I would definitely increase the timer a little bit for the Eruption, make it a little more visual so you can tell your timer instead of just having a small countdown for the first time. Because when you get down to, I want to say it's 3 seconds, it'll say 3, 2, 1, but if you reset the timer, you don't get that cooldown again. It doesn't show up on your screen. So it can be a little frustrating there, so maybe something visual would help. But otherwise, I don't really have any issues with the game mode. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's definitely a point of view I've heard a lot. I think a lot of people enjoyed themselves. I actually feel a little differently about it. So I enjoyed that it was more or less just a straight Slayer mode. I liked that. That felt like a nice change up from Rift and from Control and kind of everything else that I was playing. But I didn't like that it felt really snowbally to me. It felt like if my team was doing badly, we were just going to get super trained for the second half of the match, and there was not a lot that I could do to change that. And vice versa, if my team was doing well, then we would end up just kind of chaining supers one after the other, or all at once into the other team, and there was very little. So it felt like the matches came out a little more lopsided, but not in a way that was like, for me at least, that was super fun. I did like getting my abilities back faster, but I feel like it was just the supers that I don't know that I didn't care for as much. How easy it felt to get those going. It felt like Mayhem Light, but it was Iron Banner.
So you'd prefer something with maybe more abilities but less supers?
Yeah. And honestly, I almost wish they had just made Iron Banner Mayhem. Like, just let everybody regen everything fast. That way, even I've especially with the Control playlist changes that they've been making, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about the experiences that all the players have in the match and how they can really vary. And the person who's on the bottom of the scoreboard in those Eruption matches was not throwing more grenades, right? They were just getting stomped in every engagement. So it was, unless you happen to get a team matchup that was just really, really like well balanced through sheer luck, which is about the only way to get a balanced team matchup right now. Somebody was having a really bad time getting just constantly exploded.
For sure.
And so I was just like, gosh, this mode is fun as long as you're getting kills. And if you screw up in the first 2 minutes, then like everyone else is ahead of you.
True. It does snowball really quickly, like you're saying.
The matches didn't go to time very much for me, so there was that. They did move quickly. But yeah, that's kind of been where I've been at with it. It felt like it was a little unpolished, and it didn't. I hadn't thought about the countdown timer though. That is a good point, because there were times when I knew that I was going to explode and I could like make a final push, and then there were other times when I just blew up and I was like, oh.
Yeah, I had a lot of those times as well. You're doing great, you're on a roll, you start running to the other spawn, and then you randomly blow up and you're confused the whole time.
I'm just like, did I get hit by a grenade? There are a lot of them flying.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Left confused there for a bit.
But yeah, the concept was interesting, but it felt a little like it hadn't been completely thought through and balanced, and I don't know.
That's fair.
So
that's definitely fair.
Well, okay, so I don't have anything else to say about Eruption. I've made my complaints.
It needs some changes, but it's a good start. It's a good start from getting away from the classic Control or classic Clash playlists.
Yes. Yeah. The compliment sandwich ends with, "I'm really glad they're trying new things."
Exactly.
because new modes, or even just honestly, I sort of wish they would reinvent the wheel a little less and just bring back some classic game modes into PvP, because there's a lot of great classic game modes that Destiny doesn't have that we could be playing. But I'm happy anytime I see a new mode in PvP. It just keeps it fresh. So, so that brings us to Trials. I've not played Trials this weekend. I've been nose to the grindstone all week long, and so I did not make time for it this go. I'll be definitely looking to get into it this season. I'm curious, are you playing it just for funsies, or is there anything in particular you're chasing right now?
Just for funsies. That's all I'm playing it for. I like to go in, mess around, maybe do some meme loadouts. If I have the time, help people get flawless and get their seals done, or at least some progress on it. But otherwise, it's just been for fun. Nothing really too crazy. Right. I did want to get that new slug. The slug looks cool.
Yeah.
It looks very interesting.
Yeah. Well, definitely, I'll have to do some digging through these Trials weapons. I still don't have the roll-on forgiveness that I want. I'm holding out for the day that aggressive burst sidearms become a meta choice again. But yeah, no. Also, I've gotten really into shotguns this season. So yeah, the new slug looks fun. Well, we'll come back to that one of these days.
And I believe it's a slug and a bow. Is that right?
Yes.
That's up for grabs this season.
The double body shot bow. Get that gut shot roll, everybody. That's the thing. That's the one.
Does it increase it by enough to pack a punch?
It does. Yeah. I
haven't messed around too much with bows or the new perk.
Yeah. So gut shot straight is just a 10% damage buff by itself to body shot damage, which puts the default body shot damage on that roll up to 95. And then literally any other extra damage that you can get lets you double body shot somebody. So
okay, well that's definitely going to be dangerous.
It's pretty solid. And obviously too, if you can one crit one body somebody very reliably as well, even if they have an overshield or healing going on, because you're packing so much damage in. And it's a lightweight, so it shoots a lot faster now. They just got a buff to their rate of fire. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. It's a very close range bow, which is a different type of playstyle for bows. But yeah, worth having for sure. At the very least, you gotta get the gut shot roll and throw it in the vault. So, well, we'll that's a talk for another episode though. So let's change tacks here. I think we've covered kind of the Crucible experience to date pretty well. Let's dive into some scout rifles.
Do it. That's what we're here for.
That's right. All right. Well, so first up, and we're going to try to get through, I think, as many scouts as we can in this episode, but there are a lot of good scout rifles out there. And so it is going to be impossible for us to cover all of them. I would invite anybody listening, if you don't hear your scout rifle covered in this episode, by all means, drop a comment on, down below for the YouTube video. Drop a comment on Twitter. Share, your scout, the role that you're looking for. I'd love to see it. I'm sure everybody else who's checking it out would as well. But yeah, we'll do the ones that we can. Well, I feel like it would be crazy not to go ahead and start with your favorite scout rifle and arguably one of the strongest scouts in the game, Hung Jury.
Hung Jury, it's a beauty. So the thing that makes it so good is, of course, box breathing, where if you ADS for about a second and a half, it gets a massive damage increase, allowing you to 3 crit any Guardian of any Rezo, which shouldn't be possible for a gun like this just because it's a 180, which means you normally need 4 crits, but it allows you to do it in 3 at a 0.67 TTK, which means you're putting down people pretty quick, and unless they have an overshield or restoration, they're pretty much going to be dropped as soon as you see them. It does a lot of flinch too, which is really nice, so if you pair that with rapid hit, it'll just reduce your recoil for the next shot, and you just 3-tap everyone, go to town.
Yeah, it's actually doing so much damage. You can 2-tap most Guardians. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's like a 64% buff on scout rifles, right? You'd know better than I the damage that's displaying, but I think it says either 99 or 100 on screen.
It's somewhere around that 60% buff. So pretty much, as long as you wait, if you want to proc box breathing twice, let's say the person you're targeted on, they'll hide behind a corner, or you have to real quick to re-challenge. If you have box breathing procced again, you can actually 2-tap with a double 99, or depending on their resil, could be more.
Yeah, so you do have to work for it, definitely. The default is going to be, that first shot is dropping, I'm doing the math right now, 99.5 damage. That's massive.
Definitely not something to sleep on.
Yeah. The base crit damage is 60.7. So, put it all together, you are clearing 140 damage in 3 shots. Not a whole lot that's going to walk through that. Now, obviously, we've got more concerns in the meta right now, but a lot of those are things that are going to be used a little closer up. And obviously, you're keeping your distance a little bit more with Hung Jury, where people aren't necessarily going to have their Juggernaut shields up in front of you, or their overshields ready to go.
It's definitely not a shotgun range scout. Just like most scouts, but you don't want to be trying to proc box breathing a little bit late. Maybe before you peek the angle, you start scoping in, get that procced. And if you're lucky enough to have the roll, just go to town.
So that's a really good point, right? So I'm kind of hearing it as, treating it a little bit like a weapon that you have to charge up. So
exactly.
I talked about this in the episode a while back on bows. I've talked about it in fusion rifle episode over the summer as well. That if you're gonna peek around a corner with a weapon where you have to do some kind of charge up, or you have to, in this case, activate a perk, you start activating the perk before you look. You don't want to add a second and a half to your time to kill, just to try to get box breathing active.
Yeah. So I'll sort of treat it like a fusion, where if I'll be jumping into a lane, I'll start pre-scoping so that by the time I'm actually in the lane, it'll already be procced. Same as you would do for a fusion, same as you would do for a bow. It's exactly the same. Yeah,
fantastic point right there. So just to throw some numbers on it here, and I'll go ahead and just talk the numbers real quick for all of these scout rifle archetypes so that we're kind of covered, and then we can just reference which is which. And this, for the listeners, of course, is all listed on the weapon stats spreadsheet. There's an archetype time to kill comparison tool. It's the second page on the spreadsheet that's going to spell out how fast you can get a kill with any given weapon. It's got some math in there so that you can get a good idea how all the different damage buffs are going to affect things. So do take a look at that if you want to play around with the numbers and see how things work. But we'll give you just kind of a quick reference here. So Hung Jury is a precision scout rifle. That means it's doing 60.7 to the head approximately and 38 to the body. It's optimally killing with 3 crits in one body in 1 second flat. So pretty not good time to kill normally, which is why box breathing is such a huge difference maker. The body shot time to kill is 6 shots in 1.67 seconds, which is not the worst body shot time to kill in the game, or even among scout rifles, but it's pretty bad. And then your mid-range 5 shots, right in between, 4 for the optimal, 6 for the body. With 1 crit and 4 bodies, you can kill somebody in 1 1/3 seconds. Again, really not good. Especially at range, it's people are in that gives them time to counterplay. They can take cover, they can drop a barricade, they can do a number of things in under a second to respond to your shots that are going to make it hard for you to finish them off. So it's very punishing to miss your crit. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give anybody trying to use scouts in the Crucible is you have to practice landing only headshots. Actually, on that note, let's take a second here as we're talking about hung jury. What would be your biggest advice for somebody trying to get good with scouts?
I would say my biggest piece of advice that I can give to anyone, it doesn't matter if you're a good player, a bad player, trying to get better player, any sort of player, don't get tunnel visioned. Staying in the scope is something a lot of people like to do. They think scouts are only good at range, which can be true, but you can take them much closer. You want to be moving around, you want to be mobile, and getting tunnel visioned is something you definitely want to avoid. Someone running up on you with a shotgun is probably going to be how you die if you're stuck in that scope. So if you can just keep mobile, maybe get a couple shots off here, a couple shots off there, that's definitely the best way to do it. Never get caught with your pants down, pretty much. You must stay mobile.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. Because especially if you do happen to be fortunate enough to have a box breathing hung jury, I have to imagine it's pretty easy to get tunnel visioned.
Very easy. Yep.
You're intentionally tunnel visioning for at least a couple of seconds.
Yeah. It's the same sort of mentality with something like a sniper, where you don't want to be caught there hard scoping too long, but you want to have enough time to, possibly get that pick.
What do you have? Do you have like mentally like an approximate time that you'll scope a lane before you move on?
It depends on the lane. So I like to keep moving with scouts, and I like to pair it with a sidearm just in case I need to get closer. Because I like to stay pretty mobile around the map, but probably about 2 to 3 seconds if no one peeks after box breathing is procced. 2 to 3 seconds max, and then I'll start moving around.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I do. Actually, I hear a lot from a lot of good players is, if you've stood still, or even if you're strafing for longer than a couple of seconds, if you're aiming down sights, you probably need to stop aiming down sights because either somebody's coming up on you, or you should just you're wasting time.
Exactly.
All right. Well, so let's finish up here with hung jury. So hung jury is a higher zoom scout. It's got zoom of 22, which means 2.2x zoom on it. So it's going to give you a lot of range, which means that the range stat is which is already fine as is virtually irrelevant. You could have like 20 range on this scout and still be hitting shots at 70 meters. Its damage fall off starts even if you have like steady rounds and no other range buffs. I think it looks like it starts while you're ADS'd at almost 82 meters, which is just a very long ways. Maybe
you
on
definitely don't need range.
Yeah,
you definitely don't need range.
Maybe on disjunction you could find an 82 meter lane, but I don't know. So I'm curious, what perks do you favor on hung jury aside from box breathing?
Aside from box breathing, yeah, I would definitely avoid any range perks. You don't need them. I would say that for 90% of scouts. pretty much everything you can get away with, because unless it's something like Disjunction, Fallstock, or I would say Widow's Court maybe, you're
Yeah.
not really going to get ranges that are exceeding probably pulse rifle range, high impact pulse range. So you don't really need anything unless you're going to be sitting way back there holding that lane. So I would go with Box Breathing, obviously, for the damage,
Right.
Rapid Hit for the reload and the stability. So every time you hit some crits, you'll get a reload buff, plus you'll get extra stability from it. And then I would go with Steady Rounds to increase the stability, and then Fluted to make it a little bit more snappy with the handling, and it'll maybe help you be a little bit more mobile. Masterwork, you can kind of do whatever you want. I like to have handling on mine. It just helps me, continue to stay mobile, continue to not play slow in the back with a scout, which is what most people would expect you to do with a scout.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, if you put Fluted and a handling masterwork on it, you'll get up to 75 handling, which is pretty darn good for a scout rifle. And I will say Rapid Hit does address one of the big weaknesses of scouts. They do not reload quickly. And so having that bonus and that reward for doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is hitting crits,
exactly,
is pretty nice. I do see Moving Target is also in there, which I feel like is probably a good fallback for people in that third perk column if they don't have Rapid Hit. Do you have a version with Moving Target? Have you played with both?
I don't personally, but I would say that's definitely the second best perk.
Yeah. There's
definitely the second best.
The other choices are a little a little mixed, especially for PvP.
For sure.
I do like heating up, but this feels like a weapon where you want to be making sure you're winning that gunfight, and you're not necessarily going to get that big of a benefit from it. Surplus is pretty decent depending on your ability choices. If you are, I think especially if you're playing more passive with a scout rifle, Surplus makes a lot of sense. You're probably hanging on to abilities longer. If you're playing a little more aggressive, which I think is how you tend to play with these scouts, I've definitely seen you playing a lot closer up than I would play with a scout rifle. So maybe you're using your abilities a little bit more often, and Surplus doesn't do a whole lot for you.
Definitely.
I
like to use healing grenades so I can get a little bit closer with the scout, just in case I make that mistake. But I would definitely say Surplus is maybe not the best.
Right. Yeah. If you don't have at least two abilities up, the benefit you're getting from it is fairly small. It is steady, right? You probably have one ability up at any given time, unless you're me, in which case you constantly just chuck everything at everyone. So that's why I can't use Surplus. I'm always on empty, and if I'm not on empty, I'm about to be. But anyways, so that's Hung Jury. Hung Jury is a great option. It is just a truly unique weapon. It's one that I kind of hope that they at some point reissue with an origin trait, because I'd love to see it with fluid dynamics. I am absolutely in love with that perk on the Omelon weapons, and I'd love to see them kind of bring back the whole Omelon suite of weapons with that origin trait. It would probably make this gun pretty scary.
And that's the one that makes it reload even quicker, right?
It's plus 20 stability and plus 20 reload at the top of the magazine, and those bonuses slowly decline the further into the top half of the magazine you get. They get to 0 at halfway through the magazine. So if you're firing 3 shots and then reloading, you're basically not really losing anything.
That would definitely address that reload problem that a lot of scouts do have.
Yeah. So then you can still, if you're very good at landing your crits, then you can use Rapid Hit, and they just sort of like synchronize. You sort of never lose anything. If you're a little less reliable at hitting your crits, then it frees you up to play Moving Target or something else to kind of keep things rolling. So Yeah, so that's a perk I love. It's not, just to be clear for the listeners, it is not on Hung Jury at present. But it is an Omelon gun, and so if it does come back, that would be the origin trait that it gets. All right, so that's Hung Jury. Now we've got a lot of exotics that I think are worth addressing, including one brand new one from Kingsfall. And I did want to ask, so first up, if you can't play with Hung Jury, you still want to run a scout. What would be your 2 or 3 other best scouts to run?
Well, I would definitely try and stay within the 180 RPM family, just because if you do get a damage buff active, that's an Emprift, Radiant, any of the tier 1 bonuses.
Yeah.
You will be able to have the same TTK as a box breathing Hung Jury. So it'll set you at 0.67. So anything like Staccato with Rampage. Let's see what else. What else do we have here? Any 180s really that do have a damage perk or something that can get you to that optimal TTK of 0.67 is definitely what I would like to sit at. Well, if you don't, sorry.
I was gonna say Staccato's a great one to talk about. But yeah, finish your thought first.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you like to peak shot a little bit more, because maybe you don't like to play as aggressive, or you don't have a damage buff to easily get up with Radiant or an Emprift or something like that, a 260 is probably the way. So something like Servant Leader, which I believe, yes, that's a 260,
yep.
Or Contingency Plan. Both of those are really, really great options. But I would say those are my top 3 legendary scouts.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about him here, and then we can talk about some of the exotics, which are very popular. And we could talk about Dumachelchis, or we could skip it, because at some point I'm going to be doing all of the Kingsfall guns. So it's up to you. I believe it does have some damage buffs going on.
I believe that one has,
and it is a precision, so
and craftable.
Yeah, so it's I take it back. The only damage buff it has is Focused Fury. That's what I was thinking of, which is a bit of a chore to get going on a scout rifle. Certainly doable. Certainly very doable.
I would definitely say if you want to use it competitively, try to stay away from that perk on any scout or pulse.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, you could farm headshots maybe to get it up, but you're not going to be winning those first gunfights, and that's going to cost you. So I'll probably come back to Dumachelchis in a later episode. But let's talk about the guns that you can be a little more competitive with at the outset. And so Staccato is the first one you mentioned. I think that's a great one to call out. This is, still obtainable, of course. It is a 180. For damage perks, like you said, it does have Rampage, which does, give you a 10% damage buff. It stacks up to 3 times. So that's just on. All you have to do is get 1 kill to get that active, and all you have to do to get that first kill in a competitive time is just have Radiant up, which obviously is super easy as a hunter. You'd have an Empowering Rift up as a Warlock, or you could be running it. If you're playing aggressively, you could be using an Arc Buddy to try to ramp up the time to kill, land 3 shots, and then take cover while you wait for your Arc Bolts to hit. As a Titan, you have to work a little harder.
It's not quite as easy as the other two.
But it is solar, and Titan has some magnificent solar exotics going that you could absolutely do some real nasty combos to get some pretty steady damage buffs going on Titan. So there's room in all 3 classes to make this work. And once you get that first kill, Rampage is up, and then all you have to do is find somebody who's in range, and range again is 70 meters. So that's pretty achievable.
Plenty of room to make a difference there.
Yeah, you absolutely do. Well, tell me what do you for perks on Staccato? what do you look for? Or what are you hunting for? Because you're actually looking for this right now.
Yep. I'm also looking for the Rampage role. I want to get a secondary scout that is... My two favorite are Suros and Amalon. They just feel the best. They sound the best. Those are my two favorite, I guess. Would they be considered factions?
Yeah, Foundries, I think.
Foundries, that's the one. Yep. Those are definitely my two favorite Foundries. So I would go with Rampage, definitely for the 0.67. And then in the first column, it's kind of personal preference. Outlaw's good if you want to reload quicker and get rid of that. It's 40 reload is its base. So you could do that. You could run with even Under Pressure just to get some extra accuracy and stability. That one's kind of personal preference, but those would be my main two.
Yep. So to run Under Pressure, you do have to kind of pre-fire the gun down to 50%. So it's definitely not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But the nice thing that Under Pressure does do is your accuracy and stability increase as you fire the weapon below 50% of the magazine. And as you're firing any gun in Destiny 2, your accuracy is getting worse. And so this Under Pressure counteracts that. So your accuracy effectively, stays roughly the same as you continuously fire the weapon at 8 rounds and below on staccato. And so that's pretty excellent. Extra stability also helps prevent your aim assist from degrading. Aim assist also degrades as you continuously fire a weapon. And so increasing the stability as you continue to fire helps to prevent your aim assist from getting worse, which again just helps you continuously land shots. So it's a good perk. You just do have to be mindful and intentionally play into it on this weapon.
Definitely.
And then, of course, it's got the Suro Synergy Origin trait. Reloading this weapon grants bonus handling and reduces incoming flinch. It's like a 6-second buff, approximately 36 handling, 20% flinch resistance. So it's pretty significant. Definitely worth having, and it kind of makes up for this weapon's stats. The base stats are a little lackluster, especially compared to Hung Jury. So it's got 10 less base range than Hung Jury. Hung Jury's at 49, it's at 39. It's got 11 less base stability, worse handling by 12 points, worse reload speed only by 6, 5 less base aim assist. So it is definitely a weaker weapon in terms of just the raw stats. But having Suro Synergy, I think, is a big help. And having some decent perks. Again, you can virtually ignore range as a stat. It really doesn't matter. It's not meaningfully worse than Hung Jury. So if you can play into the stability, which you can do, right? It's got steady rounds, which does not meaningfully affect your range, but does give you a nice big stability buff. Throw Polygonal on there, or Fluted Barrel for a little bit of stability and some great handling. I feel like you probably want to play this pretty similar to Hung Jury, right?
Pretty much exactly the same. Unfortunately, like you were saying, the stats are not really the best in comparison, but Hung Jury is kind of just the king that if you don't have it, it's definitely I missed out moment.
Yeah, what can you do? Nothing. But the nice thing about Staccato, of course, is that it is a solar weapon. Hung Jury is a kinetic, so it does free you up to decide which slot you want to run the scout in. So if you can get that roll, it gives you choices. Choices are always good. All right, so that's the Staccato 46, and then I'm sorry, what was your other one that you had mentioned? The other 180.
I don't know for 180s. I know there was Contingency Plan, which is 260.
Oh, the 260. All right. Yeah,
that one's very, very good with kill clip.
Yeah. So the Contingency Plan for reference, it's a rapid fire. So the rapid fires, I guess I didn't get through all these. We'll just do it now. For base damage, they're dealing 28 to the body, and approximately 46.9 to the head. So they are killing optimally in 0.93 seconds with 4 crits and a body. 8 body shots will net you a kill in 1.63 seconds. And 2 crits and 4 bodies, sort of again, kind of right in the middle there, will kill somebody in 1.17 seconds. Again, definitely, as with all scouts, heavily rewarding getting the crit to get the kill in an optimal amount of time. That said, any damage buff at all, just 10%, I should say, just at least 10% will allow you to kill with 4 crits in 0.7 seconds. So if you can find a way to push the damage up just a little bit, activating Radiant and Empower and Rift, and any of the stuff we've talked about, contingency plan, and it's all of its fellow rapid fires definitely get pretty scary.
I would say they're definitely the closest contenders outside of the 180 archetype that can compete with all the damage perks on the 180s. That 0.67 TTK is just, it's pretty hard to beat, but they get pretty close with 0.7.
Yeah.
And they feel very reliable too.
They do feel, I think the biggest thing I've noticed is that the rapid fire scouts are just really easy to use.
Yep.
It's actually not hard to land crits with most of them. They have about as much range as any scout. You know, you're well over 60 meters. So your engagement distances are kind of, if you can see them, you can probably hit them without any noticeable like loss of damage or aim assist. So what do you like to look for on the rapid fires, contingency plan in specific?
Specifically with contingency, I would definitely go with the kill clip for free damage. You can't go wrong there.
Yeah.
And then something you don't usually see, tunnel vision, because it just pairs perfectly with kill clip, and it'll give you that extra ADS handling and the 20 aim assist. It does reduce by 20% in the accuracy cone size as well, and it's a really great perk that pairs with kill clip. So not only is it going to be easier for you to hit crits, but you're going to be doing more damage, and it just stacks.
Yeah.
It pairs perfectly.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. I think that's a great pairing. It's a pairing that you can't necessarily get on just any gun. There are definitely a lot of them out there, but it does go well. Kill clip on a rapid fire does really good things for him. It improves all of the times to kill to competitive levels. You know, 3 crits and a body for a 0.7 second time to kill. Your like kind of average scenario, 1 crit and 4 bodies gives you a 0.93 second time to kill, which is the normal optimal on these guns. Only now it's like way easier, like really, really hard to not hit. So even the body shots, you could body somebody down in 1.17 seconds. So kill clip is pretty magnificent on these guns. It makes them absolute terrors to face. One of the few weapons really where I would say, like, yeah, I'll play kill clip. I might even play it in 3s because the range on these is so good. Your odds of finding another person within that 5-second window are a lot better than on, you know, say a hand cannon where you're constrained to about 30 meters.
I feel like it's definitely easier to get more aggressive, maybe not be playing as slow with these 260 RPM rapid fire scouts.
Yeah.
They let you kind of feel like it's not really its normal scout rifle type mindset.
They feel like really long range auto rifles in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Really long range auto rifles. Like the precision auto rifles are hitting like 33 meters. So these are doubling that straight up. Even with just 20 points of range, you know, if you've got steady rounds and fluted barrel, which I feel like are just great, pretty much any scout rifle.
You can't go wrong.
Extra stability, extra handling, great way to go. Extra airborne effectiveness, because who knows when you might have to land that one jump shot. Not that contingency plane has good AE, but it is conceivable. You could make it happen. So, yeah, so I like that. Probably, again, either a handling or a stability masterwork. What would you favor on these weapons? I always like stability on these guns, but
Probably for the 260s, I would go with stability. They already have decent handling most of the time,
yeah,
but unfortunately, contingency only has 20 as a base, but most times they feel a little bit snappier. So maybe stability for this one.
yeah, it does have pretty terrible base handling stat, but the rapid fire scouts just handle a little bit better than you'd expect, I think. So yeah, if you can push it up some, that helps, but also keeping your shots on target helps.
Exactly.
All right. So did you have another 260 scout rifle for us?
Yeah. The Servant Leader is another really good 260. It's got a lot of perks, so maybe not as easy to get the roll you want.
This is the Gambit scout rifle, if I recall. Yep. From I guess it's from a while back, but is it still dropping?
From what I know, it still drops.
Okay.
But I don't play Gambit much because I like to save myself the pain.
Yeah, same. So I feel like you got to play a lot of Gambit to get yourself a decent Servant Leader, or you just got to have that good streamer RNG, which not even all streamers have, sadly. But
I definitely have not been able to get the role I was looking for yet, unfortunately.
So Servant Leader, the biggest thing that stands out that makes this gun really different from a lot of other scouts and just weapons in general is it has 2.6 base zoom, which is just an insanely high level of zoom that I think a lot of people struggle with. You almost like, I do have one of these that I took out for a while, and I felt like I had to almost play it like a sniper rifle.
Yep. It's definitely something for those disjunction games.
Yeah.
But it is a very good, very fun kinetic scout.
Well, and it's like you mentioned, it has a ton of perks on it. So what is the role that you're chasing?
Definitely going to be Kill Clip again. Just it performs so well on the 260 rapid fires.
Yeah.
And then probably pair that with Rapid Hit. You have quite a few options here. Rapid Hit works. No Distractions works as well with the recent changes to that. Or even something like Subsistence. But those are definitely the top three, I would say. Very, very competitive option.
Well, so Rapid Hit, definitely pretty rewarding. Again, this is one of those weapons where it's really pretty easy to hit crits. That feels like a natural pairing with Kill Clip to me. I feel like that's probably the strongest pairing. Tunnel Vision's always good. Gosh, it just has so many perks. It's almost like if you get a Kill Clip roll, you kind of just have to go with what you get.
Exactly.
It does.
How many is that? Is that 12 in each?
Yeah, it's 12. It's one of those playlist weapons that has 12 in each column. And it just sort of is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. This gun has Rampage, it has Kill Clip, it's got multi-kill clip, it's got Adrenaline Junkie, and it's got Harmony all in that fourth column. So your odds of getting a damage perk are pretty good. Kill Clip, I think, is probably the strongest choice out of all those for my money. Rampage is good enough to give you a 4 crit optimal time to kill, 0.7 seconds. It won't do much for any of the other kind of, if you don't hit all crits, it's not doing as much for you. You can still kill in 0.93 seconds with 3 crits and 2 bodies, so it makes the normal optimal time to kill easier to achieve. So it's not a bad perk on these guns, but I think it doesn't make them as crazy consistently fast as Kill Clip does. It's not nearly as forgiving. And it's got a tighter timer unless you're running the Rampage spec, which means then you can't run a different mod. And I don't know. I guess we haven't talked too much about what mods you go for on scouts, but I do like to keep my options open. I don't like being locked into something like Rampage spec where it's just only this very specific scenario. It's buying me an extra 2 seconds of time.
Kill clip is definitely the more forgiving option, I would say.
Yeah.
Overall, just a great perk. You can't really go wrong with it, especially on scouts.
All right, so that's a lot of good legendary scout rifles for folks to chase right now. Before we start talking about exotic scouts, and there are a ton of exotic scouts, are there any other legendary scout rifles that you wanna throw a special mention to?
There is actually one. We haven't mentioned any of the 150 RPM scouts, so we can throw one in there.
Yeah.
Which would be Transfiguration.
Oh, for sure.
It's going to be a pretty easy one to get if you do happen to get a drop, because there's only 4 perks in each column. And you can actually get Rampage and Kill Clip on that. So quite a bit of damage in each shot, as long as you do happen to get that to proc. I believe it 2 taps if you get both of them up at the same time.
That's that's a lot of damage. And so that's a lightweight, or no, that's a high impact, excuse me. That's a high impact scout. So just for comparison, so the high impact scouts are doing is 73.7 to the head, 42 to the body. So normally killing optimally with 3 crits in 0.8 seconds. The body shot time to kill is 1.6 seconds with 5 shots. And you can 2 crit 2 body in 1.2 seconds, which nobody wants to do. That takes way too long. Kill clip by itself lets you 1 crit 2 body in that same 0.8 seconds. So it's already pretty darn good. That puts the crit damage at 98. So you actually, with kill clip alone, you can 2-tap all the way up to, let's see, that's going to be 196 damage, up to about 7 resilience. I think it's just shy of actually being able to tap 8 resilience. It might do it. It depends on the exact fractions. That's one specific damage threshold I can't say I've manually tested. But needless to say, a lot of Guardians are getting 2-tapped with kill clip alone on
Still
high impact.
Very good. Definitely very, very good.
Yeah, so throw Rampage on top of that, an extra 10% multiplier. Yeah, I mean...
it's game over. You're not getting away. It's very powerful. And I know a lot of people like Jade Rabbit, so if you do happen to like the 150 RPMs, then it's definitely something to look out for.
Yeah. You, gosh, with both of those active, you're just shy of 3 bodying somebody. It's like 61 and change damage with both of those active to the body. So it's a ton of damage. Expect to be getting a lot of great cleanup kills, a lot of surprisingly fast kills, and very easy kills with those perks when you're playing with that weapon, especially in 6s. And I think we can probably pretty reliably suggest that people kind of go with the same stuff, right? Would you say fluted barrel, steady rounds?
For sure. Pretty much the exact same for almost every scout. It's
handling masterwork.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, and then just throw on the damage. That's all you need. Decent odds with Transfiguration. That is the Last Wish Scout Rifle for anybody who's not sure where that's from. So you do have to get some folks together for a raid team, but it is definitely doable. All right, well let's go ahead and make this the transition point and talk about some exotics. Before we do that, though, real quick, I was curious, what do you go with for mods on your Scout Rifles?
So personally, it's going to sound really crazy, but anything that isn't already full auto, I immediately put on a full auto mod.
Okay.
It's going to turn into a setting pretty soon, so until that happens, I'm keeping the mod on. But it seems to, doesn't matter if you're M&K, it doesn't matter if you're controller, it seems to just make them feel more consistent and eliminate that human error that you tend to have between the 2 shots or the 3 shots, 4 shots, whatever your damage multiplier is. It feels really, really nice. If you don't want to use that, because let's say you're doing great as is, you could run with definitely not an Icarus grip because you should be on the ground.
Definitely.
But you could do something like a radar tuner, which isn't very common. Maybe help teach you and prepare you for getting tunnel vision less, so you can get to being more mobile.
Yeah.
So you could do radar tuner, you could use quick access sling and just increase the stow speed and res speed, because most of the high impact scouts don't really have good handling, so you could do that. There's a few different options that you could go with, but those would definitely be my top picks.
Yeah, I like those. I like those picks. I have to say, I've not heard a lot of people recommending full auto retrofit for the weapon mod, but I have heard a lot of people saying that they're using it. And I don't know what all the fuss is about myself, but I feel like maybe this week I need to just like equip it on my weapons and see if there's something there.
I'm not sure what the big deal is, like why it feels so much better on scouts specifically.
Yeah.
But it does really help. And I've told this to everyone I know that uses a scout or has put on a scout, even just to try it in a match, and they'll say that it immediately feels better. So whatever it's doing, it feels great.
All right. Well, that definitely feels like a recommendation that people should at least give it a shot. I do like radar tuner and quick access sling both. Those are probably among my most equipped mods right now on weapons. It's for me, it's those and freehand grip, which obviously is not a scout rifle recommendation. So for a scout, radar tuner I think is a super underrated mod that I don't hear people talking about enough. How useful it is to have your radar back immediately upon dropping ADS, because that delay can get you killed pretty regularly.
For sure. And it is immediate. It's immediately back, just right back once you stop ADSing. It's a phenomenal mod that you don't really get to see a lot of benefit from.
Yeah.
On other weapons, but it feels really great on scouts.
Yeah. I like it for scouts. I'll do it on heavies actually. Okay. I'll put it on my if I'm running a legendary rocket launcher in PvP, I'll always put radar tuner on it. Specifically because I'm probably ADSing to track, and they're just so clunky that I'm like, yeah, okay, if somebody's coming up behind me, like if I go to take a shot and they take cover and I don't take the shot, like I need to know if someone's coming up behind me, so I don't waste that rocket. So I don't know. That's kind of been my biggest use of that mod, but it is there's uses for it. And scouts, that's the place where I would use it. Well, speaking of the importance of radar, let's use that to dive into the exotic scout rifles. And one of the ones that has been arguably one of the easiest to use scout rifles in the game from launch. And that would be Mida Multi-Tool, the scout rifle that does it all. So this is a 200 RPM scout. It's a lightweight class scout rifle. Its exotic perks are that it makes you run faster. It lets you keep your radar up while aiming down sights. It's got built-in high caliber rounds. It's just like all the things that might be annoying about playing with the scout rifle. It's just like, what if you didn't have to deal with that? So it's pretty phenomenal. It's got 100 aim assist. It's pretty phenomenal and extremely hard to not hit headshots with. That's about all I can say about Mida right there. Is like if you've never used the scout, if you feel like scout rifles are hard to use, but you you're stuck on a long range map and you want to use a scout, or if you want to start feeling out scout rifles, it's like this is the easiest entry point I could give anybody.
Yeah, that's all I would say as well. It's if you don't have any practice or you want to get into them, you need a long range option. It's perfect. It's very hard to miss. It does a ton of. It takes away all the issues of most scouts, which is reload or handling, and it just gives it to you for free. So I'd definitely say that's one of the best things about it.
Yeah, it is. So lightweight, we haven't talked about yet. They are 31 to the body, 54 to the head for their base damage. That has them killing optimally in 0.9 seconds with 4 crits. Let's not even talk about the other times to kill because they're just slow. Slow fundamentally is the answer. You need to hit all crits. And in terms of like damage buffs to try to kill faster, it takes a good amount of extra damage to try to kill faster. 15% is not enough to speed up the time to kill on these, which essentially rules out like 90% of the stuff that's easy to do.
Unfortunately, that is the biggest downside of these 200 RPMs. They just don't. You gotta hit 4 crits pretty much all the time.
Yeah. You'd have to get at least like a 25% damage buff to get them to a 3 crit kill. So that's Will of Radiance, essentially. Or Weapons of Light is also doing 1.25 now. That was changed earlier in the year, I believe, down from 1.35. So if you're not dropping a bubble or a well, you're not 3-tapping anybody with Mida. But that's okay, because you really can't miss. All right, well that's Mida. Let's leave that at that. I think we would be remiss not to talk about Jade Rabbit and Polaris Lance. These are the high impacts. And high impact scouts, like we already talked about, do a whole lot of damage. And in terms of what you see people actually using in the game for high impact scout rifles, it's like Jade Rabbit or nothing, right?
Jade Rabbit's definitely the one. I mean, the aim assist alone, it's 80 aim assist. It does a lot of work for you, which is, I guess, the best part about it. So if you like to peek shot, it's the one. It does a lot of damage, has a lot of aim assist. The perk, unfortunately, seems like sometimes it just doesn't work. I've seen a few different people talking about this, but otherwise, it's a great scout.
Yeah, it truly, like the biggest selling point there is just massive aim assist, making it really easy to 3-tap.
Massive aim assist.
From across the map. You know, like all scout rifles, it's got high zoom. You know, they're pretty much all right around 2.0 or higher. 2.0 is like low zoom for a scout. And so Jade Rabbit is relatively easy to use for a scout rifle, and you can pretty much ignore the exotic perk. Like it's borderline irrelevant. This is one where I would not be surprised if it gets like just some kind of total rework at some point in the future. You know, I know they've said they've got lists of underperforming exotics, and Jade Rabbit's not underperforming, but it has nothing to do with the exotic effect.
Exactly. It's got crazy high stats. I mean, even the recoil direction is at 100 just by default. Yeah. So
talk about easy to use.
Yeah. If you want to hit your crits, Mida and Jade, those are the two.
Yeah. Those are just like your default, like, hey, don't think, just scout.
Yep.
All right. Well, there we do have some. So, honorable mention to Polaris Lance. It's competing with Jade Rabbit, which is just a crappy position to be in. It does have a fun exotic perk. The perfect fifth. You know, precision hits, return ammo, landing 4 precision hits, lands a delayed solar explosive round, which is just a massive explosion. So it is fun. I don't know if anyone is claiming that it's good, but it is
personally, I would take it over Jade Rabbit. I know people are going to call me crazy for that.
Yeah.
But any day of the week, I would take it over Jade. It's especially for that perk, the exotic perk. All you have to do is hit a crit and you get ammo back. It takes all the issues with reload away. It takes some of the handling issues away because you're going to be playing slower with this. It's a 150. It's It's got some really, really great options that not a lot of people are giving it the credit for.
Yeah, it does. It really does get overshadowed, which, I think especially if you spend some time with scouts, you get good at hitting your headshots, even on a lower aim assist weapon. A lot of them have lower aim assist. It's Mida and Jade are huge standouts in that regard. Like there's not a lot of scouts that have that level of aim assist. Prolaris Lance does actually reward you for playing well. So it's got some stuff going for it. It's a bit, I don't know if I would call it underrated, but it's a bit slept on in terms of the fun factor for sure.
Definitely agree.
All right, well let's talk about. Gosh, I feel like every single exotic scout has to be mentioned because they're all doing something interesting right now. I'm going to go to one of my favorites, Skyburners Oath.
Yes.
I have been waiting for this gun to be good for years, and finally, last season, it got good. And it's on disjunction, it's a little oppressive at times right now because this is another scout that has crazy high aim assist, 90 aim assist. It's got built-in explosive rounds. The hip fire inflicts Scorch, which lets you do some really, really funny things with the Scorch grenades that allow you to just blow people up even when they're in a well. It is full auto built in, which is nice. I have to say, I do like the full auto on it. So there maybe there is something to it. I feel like I play well with Skyburners in full auto. And in PvE, it does shoot through Cabal Phalanx shields, so there's that going for it, which is what it is, I guess. But yeah, it's just a really, really fun solar exotic scout rifle, and the explosive rounds make it really a lot easier to finish people off because it makes it a little harder for people to take cover. Every time somebody takes cover, you can shoot that corner of the ground, and if they haven't gotten all the way over, you can finish them off. So it's just fun right now. And
it's just fun.
Yeah.
It's just fun. It's a really fun weapon to use.
And in terms of being able to flinch people off of you, this is a scout because of the built-in explosive rounds that can do that a little more effectively than a lot of other scout rifles can. So that's kind of another selling point for me personally. Have you had some fun with Skyburners Oath the last few months?
In terms of using it in private matches, yes. Other places, not exactly.
Yeah,
it's a really fun weapon, but I don't know if I have the patience for it. It definitely takes a level of practice.
That's
now,
fair.
I will say, with the Scorch grenades, like you mentioned, that is a lot of fun. Being able to throw down the grenade, hit someone like once or twice with it, even if you miss, it's still going to scorch them.
Yeah.
Just got to be somewhere around them with that explosive round, and they're going to blow up. It'll kill everyone around them. It's sort of like a Caliban's that you can use on any class.
Yeah. It is, and that's really where I like to pair it the best. Is just go full Scorch on somebody. So anyways, that's Skyburners Oath. I don't want to dwell on it any longer than it deserves. I'm gonna save the new one for last. So let's talk about Symmetry next up here. This is an Arc Exotic Scout. It's a rapid fire shooting 260 rounds per minute. We've kind of talked about those a little bit. It's one of the archetypes that is a lot easier to use in Crucible right now, that can be somewhat competitive. And Symmetry has a really fantastic exotic perk. So it has an alternate fire that shoots Arc Seeker rounds, which are essentially like the Fallen Arc rifle rounds that track toward targets very aggressively. They fly pretty fast, really easy to hit people with them, even hip firing. And it's got the perk Dynamic Charge, so precision hits build up, dynamic charge. That stacks up to, I never get past 7, so I forget the top, but it's 8 or 9. Swapping to Arcseeker mode while dynamic charge is active increases damage based on the number of stacks, and also reloads the magazine based on the number of stacks that you have. As long as you get up to 7 stacks of dynamic charge, which just means 7 headshots. Even if you didn't get kills, just 7 headshots. You can just kind of farm them up. You can 2-shot anybody with these. And if they are standing next to somebody, these rounds when they strike do deal a bit of AoE damage. And so you can 3-shot any 2 guardians who are standing next to each other, thanks to that AoE. So dynamic charge is super effective. This is a great weapon for 6s, for going on sprees with, for any kind of build that focuses on getting headshots. And it's got great aim assist.
Great aim assist. It's always the biggest selling point. I haven't really tested around much when it comes to Arc 3.0 and pairing and chaining with this, but I'm sure there's something.
So sadly, it does not have any direct synergy, except that it is an arc weapon. And so the arc fragments that kind of are centered around having an arc weapon and getting kills with arc weapons do work with Symmetry. So you can sort of integrate it into your Arc 3.0 loadout that way. But it doesn't apply Jolt or anything like that. So it's not kind of a direct keyword link up there.
Hopefully that may get addressed in a later patch. Kind of like Jade Rabbit, how it needs a rework.
Yeah. I'd love to see them bring more of these weapons that feel like the element that they are kind of into those keywords. So, and Symmetry is definitely one where it really feels like an arc weapon. All right. So we're saving up some good ones for the end here. Dead Man's Tale. I think anyone would be hard pressed to say they've played Crucible and not at some point gotten upset about Dead Man's Tale. So I'm gonna pass the mic to you here, DefyFly. Talk to me about Dead Man's Tale.
So Dead Man's, it's really great for both hipfire and ADS, which is something you don't usually have in scout rifles. You mainly want to always be aiming down sights with scouts, but this is the one exception where you kind of get to go all cowboy mode and shoot all over the place with the hipfire. It has a perk called Cranial Spike, where if you chain precision hits, you get bonus target acquisition and range. That recently got changed from being extra damage. It would stack up to 5, which I'm very, very excited about that change. I know it could be pretty powerful, allowing for some really easy, and some would say undeserving, 2 taps.
Yeah.
But with the recent change, it feels pretty good and not as aggravating as it used to be. It's got some pretty good perks, which also you can pick up at Xur. Xur sells both Hawkmoon and a Dead Man's Tale. You can pick one up there. I would definitely say Subsistence is one of the best perks on it. Just really good, because rather than reloading one perk into the mag, it'll put, or not one perk, one shot into the mag, it'll actually pull 2, which is really, really nice.
That is nice.
And I know a lot of people like to use Vorpal, but personally I would stay away just because it is only for supers in PvP, so not quite as good, but it's really just personal preference. Moving Target's a really good one as well. There's a lot of things you can do with that.
I do want to caution folks that this is something actually we had recently confirmed by Bungie. Moving Target's aim assist bonus is only active while you're aiming down sights. So Dead Man's Tale, actually, that's one perk that I used to think I wanted, and now I'm a little iffier on. Like, I have to really be like playing the longer range game with it. If I'm hip firing a lot, then Moving Target's just a dead perk.
I was not aware of that on DMT specifically. That's good to know.
Yeah. So
It's very good to know.
This is like just last month we learned this, so I think it's probably not been widespread in the community. Yeah, tell your friends.
Yeah, never mind then. Don't use moving target on DMT.
I like that you said subsistence though, and the reason that I like it is that the first roll I ever got was a subsistence roll, and I always thought it felt great.
It feels really nice.
And everyone was like, no, you got to get Vorpal. No, you got to get this. And I'm just like, okay, I guess. But like the subsistence one always felt the best to me.
I would definitely agree. Subsistence with the 2 rounds reloaded, it's super slept on.
You've confirmed my personal bias, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. So I'll throw some quick numbers on Dead Man's Tale because it's a little unique compared to a lot of weapons. So first up, the Cranial Spike stacks. They are still stacking up damage in PvE. This is important for people to know. I think people misread the TWAB. I've seen a lot of people saying it lost its damage buff and Bungie messed up PvE. That did not happen. Didn't happen. So stacks of Cranial Spike will grant 8 points of range, 4 points of aim assist, and a 3% reload speed scaler. So it is. That's a pretty big buff for every stack. Like very, very worthwhile, very nice. Just every time you shoot the gun, the next shot, like it's going to feel a little better, right? The range is stretching out your accuracy cone, helping you stay on target. The aim assist is essentially like rewarding you for landing that shot. And, like we've talked about before, your aim assist gets worse with every continuous shot that you fire. It doesn't fully reset between shots if you're firing at anything close to the maximum rate of fire. And so getting that aim assist bump in between those shots helps you like make up for that aim assist degradation, which just means landing crits with Dead Man's Tale has never been easier than it is now. So that's a big selling point. Have you is Dead Man's Tale something that you take out into the Crucible very often?
No, and for one reason.
Okay.
It takes up the slot of my hung jury.
I'm
a little bit biased when it comes to that one, but I know a lot of people do like to use that one, and it's definitely, other than Jade Rabbit, I would say the main scout contender.
Yeah. This is probably the scout that I feel like I notice the most in the Crucible. So I don't feel like certainly I get killed by Jade Rabbit now and then, as do we all, but a lot of times what happens is I get killed once by it, and then I'm like, okay, somebody's playing Jade Rabbit. And so I just don't walk into those lanes. And then I don't get killed by it nearly as much. But Dead Man's Tale, if somebody's good with it, like, what are you going to do? They're fighting at every range.
I would say it's definitely the most dangerous for when it comes to peak shots, just because of how much damage the gun actually does do. So if someone's playing cover really well or playing behind a barricade and they just keep peeking out, shooting a shot, peeking and hiding again, and then just over and over, it's very hard to compete against.
Yeah. It does a lot. It does a lot. So its normal base rate of fire is 120, but when it is hip firing, it is actually doing 130. So it fires a little faster when it's hip firing, but gives you the same damage, which means hip firing is sort of your optimal play, but it's still plenty effective aiming down sights. Very easy to land shots when you're aiming down sights. Beautiful sight picture. Absolutely beautiful sight picture. And the one thing they did that I think a lot of people are struggling to understand right now is when you stack cranial hipfire up to times 5, or Cranial Spike up to ×5, the hipfire changes like completely. So instead of being 130 RPM dealing normal damage, it becomes a 180 RPM and it takes a 20% damage penalty. And what that means is that instead of being a 3 crit, it becomes a 2 crit, 2 body. And that, I think, really throws people off. Now you can still 3 crit low resiliences. I think going by the math, up to 6 resilience, you can still 3 crit. So just one more reason to run at least 7 resilience in the Crucible at all times. Not that I see a lot of people stacking Cranial ×5 and going on hipfire sprees, but it is certainly possible. It's a popular gun. So I guess with those numbers in mind, like what are your thoughts on this change to Dead Man's Tale?
So far in PvP specifically, I know that PvE has kind of some big changes there.
Yeah.
But in PvP specifically, I actually like it. I think it's much more manageable to play against. As far as playing with it, I haven't had too much time, just because once again it does take away from my my one favorite scout, which won't be mentioned.
Yeah.
But it is much more manageable to play against, which is something that's really great. It felt a little too oppressive when it first came out, and the catalyst just made it even better. So I think this was a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated change, so I think it's thrown a lot of people off. Like, they're not quite sure what to expect with it now, but it feels to me like a good change. Like, you lose the damage bonus, which was what was making it difficult to fight. But you do get a great, what really adds up to a big ease of use bonus. I view this as like, play the gun at the same range as you were playing it at before. Don't try to account for the extra range. Just rely on the fact that you're going, as you shoot, your accuracy and your aim assist won't really be getting meaningfully worse, which they were before. So it's like you've traded damage for ease of use. Up until you get to Cranial ×5, and then I don't know how to feel about that. That's a wacky change for me. But it is what it is for now. Yeah, and in PvE, just as a reminder to folks, it's still getting the Cranial Spike damage. Like, if you're using this outside the Crucible, it's just better. This is a flat buff. So don't feel like you've been punished, like you can't use it. Like, you can definitely use it outside the Crucible. All right, well, that's Dead Man's Tale, and now it is time to talk about Touch of Malice. So I know you've been playing some Kingsfall, DeFi. Have you been fortunate enough to get Touch of Malice?
I don't want to talk about it.
Oh no.
We're 0 in whatever we're at now. All 3 characters every week. It's not looking good.
Yeah, it's a raid exotic. We'll say that about the chances of getting it. So I also do not have it, but I've been able to work with some folks that have to get some testing done. Well, it is a 260 RPM. So we kind of, that gives everybody the baseline in terms of how it's going to work. It's not a super fast base time to kill, but it is fairly easy to use, long range, reasonably fast time to kill for the range it has. It does have, some pretty decent base stats, much better reload speed than a lot of scouts. But the main thing that's going for Touch of Malice that's special is the intrinsic perk, also named Touch of Malice, which threw me off because most exotics have an intrinsic perk that is named something else. And so I thought that I had written down the wrong name when I first started looking at this, but But no, they're both Touch of Malice. It is the perk and the gun. And so the way the perk works, the intrinsic, is the final round in the magazine deals bonus damage. It's a 30% damage buff. And it drains the attacker's life force, which effectively means you lose 10 points of health every time you shoot the gun while you're on that final round. And then it regenerates itself. So you never run out of ammo. You never have to reload. But if you don't reload, then you get 30% damage buff and lose about 10 points of health on every shot. Finally, rapidly defeating 3 targets restores health. Certainly very nice in PvE. A little less useful in PvP, where that's kind of a tall order. But it could happen. And then it has a perk that is new to Touch of Malice for Destiny 2, charged with Blight. Precision hits drain combatants' life force and charge up a ball of darkness. So this is an alternate weapon action. So you can alternate, hit the alternate, whatever you have that map to, and then fire to unleash a Blight projectile, which deals just a boatload of damage and shrouds combatants in darkness and blinds them. So the Blight is pretty excellent and pretty easy to use. But the thing that you're going to run into more often in the Crucible, if you're attempting to use this weapon, is that final round buff, the Touch of Malice buff. And so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that. And DeFi, I'm curious to get your thoughts on how somebody could successfully incorporate this into a build in the Crucible. So
I think probably Warlocks are mainly going to have the easiest time.
Yeah,
just the amount of healing, especially for that final round, like you were saying, with the 30%, it's a good chunk. So any sort of healing you can get, healing grenades with ×2 restoration if you're using that fragment, and then healing rifts. It's just, you want to stack up as much healing as possible. So I think you could probably get it to work on a Warlock. It'd probably be the easiest, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's probably the safest bet. You could even go, if you want to get really nutty, you could go Empower and Rift with Child of the Old God, so the child steals health for you.
I feel like you're kind of pushing your limits on that one.
Might be pushing the limits a little bit there, but
leave that for 6s.
Yeah. I like for a weapon like this too, where it's leaving you vulnerable. I'm wondering, hey, Stag gives me damage reduction. If I'm running Warlock, I'm running a Rift. Maybe I want some damage reduction while I'm in that Rift as well. So I feel like there's a viable option there if you're going the healing Rift route. But yeah, so just to kind of talk about the time to kill with Touch of Malice active. So this is with the 30% damage buff going on. It takes your optimal time to kill down to 0.7 seconds from the 0.93 base. 3 crits and 1 body. It takes your body shot time to kill to 1.17 seconds with 6 bodies. And you can still hit that 0.93 second time to kill with 1 crit and 4 bodies. So it does some good things for you, but it's by no means broken. It's very much not overpowered, I would say, in any sense, especially since it's draining you, right? Those 4 shots, that's 40 health that you've given up. Even if you're at 10 resilience, you're effectively now at 160 health. Anyone's time to kill against you is going to be faster or easier, or both. So it's going to be hard to make this work in PvP.
Definitely. If you do get lucky enough to see someone who's good with it, that's pretty impressive. But
yeah,
definitely not something that's broken.
Yeah.
Things like Mida and Jade Rabbit with the high aim assist are definitely going to be better PvP options if you're trying to get into scouts for the first time.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. This is they've done well where this is like, I think, a really solid PvE choice. It's great for PvE. Does a lot of cool stuff. And in the Crucible, it's like, it feels like it's right there, like you could almost make it work. But it's like, it's risky. Like you better be getting the drop on folks.
Yeah. And try and use that blight if you can. That blight does, if you hit them with the center of it, I believe it's only the center. Because I think on the edges it doesn't quite fully kill. But if you hit them with the middle of it, it's a one shot, and it is pretty cool to see that happen.
Yeah, I think toward the edges it's more like 160 something. Like it'll still put a big hurt, and you're only going to have to one tap them to finish them. But it is, yeah. Yeah, you can. Yeah, if you can catch him, if you can catch somebody right in the face, it's cool. So it's a fun weapon. I don't know that it's a good weapon for PvP right now, and that's okay. I'm okay with that.
I don't know if I'm ready to see people running around with that.
Yeah,
it's kind of like Skyburners. If you find someone that's crazy with it, you might want to watch out.
Yeah. You just stay out of range or out of sight. All right, well that is it. That's all the exotics. Like I said, there were a ton of them, but they felt like they were all worth mentioning. DeFi, do you have any final thoughts for us on the Scout Rifle life, on Scout Rifles that you wish we could have had time to talk about, advice for people, and anything along those lines?
I do want to just reiterate the whole, when it comes to playing with a scout rifle, everyone does think you wanna play slow, you wanna be in the back. It's not always the best, especially on a smaller map. Maybe not Endless Veil, especially if you're trying to pick them up, but getting tunnel visioned is the biggest issue. So staying mobile, staying alert, kind of getting used to lanes and where the angles that people commonly peek are, so you can kind of get the drop on them first. Scout rifles are definitely something where if you're peeking a lane first, you're most likely going to win it. So try and stay mobile as best as you can. Try and not get tunnel visioned with the sniper rifle hard scoping mentality.
Yeah. I mean, that's I feel like a lot of times PvP advice comes down to remembering the fundamentals so often. Because they're so easy to get away from. But
exactly.
Always coming back to that, look, is there a target? No. Okay, let's move. And my biggest advice for everybody is always, like, if you get shot first, just bug out, like, find cover, disengage.
Exactly. And that goes for all weapon types, really. It's not even just specific to scouts. It's perfect advice just in general, which is one thing people need to... That's the one thing I think most people have the hardest time working on, is when they should be challenging versus when they should be maybe backing up, taking a break, get some healing, or wait for a teammate, something like that.
Yeah. For me, the least fun part of the Crucible match is running from spawn to the engagement, and so I really make it my goal to not do that any more often than I have to. So yeah, I mean, there are people who just don't care, who are just in it for the 3 and out, and that's fine. If you don't feel like putting in the effort, I get it. Crucible can be intimidating, but if you do want to have a better experience, I think those are 2 really good tips right there to take away from this episode. Don't tunnel vision with scouts or with pulses or with hand cannons or with any weapon. Don't tunnel vision. Hard scope, peek the lane. If there's nobody, move on. Like you said, DeFi. That's just such classic fundamental Crucible advice.
Keep it going.
And so I hope we've said that enough times to drill it into everybody's minds in this episode. All right, once more, for the folks in the back, DeFi, where can we find more from you online?
So the most common place is going to be over on Twitter at DefyFly. And then I do occasionally stream. It's been a little bit slow recently, but that's the other place, over on Twitch as well.
All right, same name?
Same name there as well. Yep.
All right, perfect. And folks, we will have those links in the show description. So if you would like to see some more Scout Rifle antics, DeFi is the guy to check out. And go ahead and hit those links. Drop a follow, a subscribe, a like, whatever you're gonna drop. Go ahead and hit that. For more from me and from all the folks here at Destiny Massive Breakdowns, you'll want to also go to Twitter. Great place. Hit @DestinyMBP. If you don't like Twitter, you're not into the Bird app, that's okay. You can hit DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com anywhere you have internet, and you will find links to all the shows, to the Discord, to the Patreon if you're already a fan and you want to support, to merch and all kinds of stuff. Linked out. The website is the central hub for everything that's going to connect you with the Massive Breakdowns community. So go ahead and check that out. Also, links in the show notes take you to all the places. And that is it. This has been episode 276. My guest, DefyFly. Myself, Kid Kutcha. Until next time, peace, Guardians.